Hi everyone, welcome back to Blazor UI Lab. Today we are diving into an important topic for Blazor developer, that is pre-rendering. So why it is useful, the issue with uninitialized running twice, and most importantly how to fix it. So if you are ever wondered why your Blazor components initialize twice, stick around because I will explain everything step by step. So let's get started. But first, let's understand the pre-rendering. When you build a Blazor server app, you want the page to load quickly instead of waiting for the SignalR connection to establish. So Blazor pre-renders the page as a static HTML so the user sees something immediately. While this improves the SEO and performance, especially for public-facing pages like blogs or landing pages. So the benefit of pre-rendering is it's a faster initial page load, better SEO optimization since the HTML is available before JS loads, which improves user performance. But there is a problem as well. The downside of pre-rendering is that Blazor calls in onInitialized event twice. First time it runs during pre-rendering on the server, and the second time runs again after SignalR connection is established. So the problem is if you are fetching data from the API, it happens twice. So if you are modifying state, it resets unexpectedly. And if you are using a database, it wastes resources. So let's see how. So I'm using the default weather page template provided by the Microsoft once we create the new project. So we'll use that for our exploration. So if I execute this, I'll put a breakpoint also. So let's go over here and then, so it's calling the very first time the load data, which will call this function to load the data into the page. So if I continue this one, it's okay. So if I refresh the page, it comes over here and then again comes over here and then so it comes two times. So on initialized event is called two times and then as we can see that it's loading the data two times also. So let's remove the breakpoint and then see the effect of it into the UI. So if I refresh the page, see the page flickers actually for a second actually. It flickers because it's loading two times the data, which is not so great. So if we, let's see again, it flickers. And to verify this, if I put a point over here and then refresh, see, it's the very first time and then again. So we will try to fix this one effectively so that the on initialization event, if it is called even twice, so we need not to call the load data two times. So we'll persist the result and get the results from there. So let us see how to fix it. So we will use persistent state to hold the results in our own initialized event. So let's see how. For this, need to inject the persistent component state. Persistent component state. So let's call this persistent component state. So we have injected that one into our constructor. Now in the over here, the logic is that one. We will check if the results, forecast exist in the persistent state. If it exists over there, get it from there, otherwise call the load data. So this is how we check. Let's shorten this. If persistent state dot try take from JSON the weather forecast. Okay, the weather forecast. Um, check a key. We can have any name of the key. So I'll show you how. For forecast. So this is how, and then try to fetch it from there. Let's say, okay. And if it exists, yeah, if it exists, so get it from there. So for our forecast should be having the data from the persistent storage like this one. But if this doesn't happen, it doesn't exist, so then in that case call the load data. Load data. Keyboard stucks. Okay, so we will try to get the results from the persistent state, and then if the data exists over there, we will pick the data from there. Otherwise, we'll call the load data event to load the data from the API. Okay, but we also need to store the data into the persistent storage so that we can fetch it later. So for this, we need to have a um, subscription class and hook into its event. While when it's persisting the data, at that time we will hook into and store our forecasts over there. Persisting component state subscription. So let's call it subscription. Okay, and over here subscription equals persistent state dot register on persisting. So when it starts persisting, we'll hook into okay. Yeah, seems fine. So persistent state dot persist as JSON. Over here, we'll use the same key which we will use to get our data out and the results. Okay, and definitely return the task completion. Okay, so this is it actually. So what we are doing is that one before in our own initialized event, we are checking the persistent state. If the data we are interested in exists over there, if it exists over there, we take from there. Otherwise, we will call the API call. And then after that, we are storing that data into the persistent state. So the first time, definitely it won't come over here, and then it will definitely load the data. But second time, it will test that we have already stored the data into the persistent state. So it will pick from there and won't call the load state. But for this one, we also need to implement the iDisposable so that we can dispose the data once the component is disposing. So that we can clean up the things before we close. So over here, we need to dispose the subscription. Yeah, that's it. So I'll put breakpoints over here and over so that we can verify that everything is fine and working expected. So let's restart the application. So let's go to the weather page. So definitely first time it will load the data because it doesn't exist in the persistent state. And then Now I refresh the page, it comes over here, and then second time it doesn't call the load data but gets from the persistent state which we want it to be. Okay, so if I remove these breakpoints and see the performance in the UI, see, and we can verify it over here as well. The first time and the second time OnInitialized event is called, but this time it gets from the persistent state, doesn't call the API at all. So this is how we can solve the OnInitialization event call in 2 times, and then how we can improve the performance by storing the data between pre-renderings um, and interactive rendering as well, and which prevents unnecessary API calls by checking if the data already exists, which improves performance by reducing network requests and all that. So instead of always fetching new data, we first check if the data is already stored in the persistent state. If yes, we use it. If not, we fetch the new data. So that was it. Hopefully this video helped you. Thanks for watching. Thank you.